Won't you tell us the names of the first two that were appointed? Tom was tugging at a buttonhole and looking sheepish. He blushed, now, and his eyes fell. Mr. Walter's heart sank within him. He said to himself, it is not possible that the boy can answer the simplest question. Why did the judge ask him? Yet he felt obliged to speak up and say, answer the gentleman, Thomas, don't be afraid. Tom still hung fire. Now I know you'll tell me, said the lady. The names of the first two disciples were David and Goliath. Let us draw the curtain of charity over the rest of the scene. 04-052.jpg 43K. Chapter V05-053.jpg 205K. About 10:30 the cracked bell of the small church began to ring, and presently the people began to gather for the morning sermon. The Sunday school children distributed themselves about the house and occupied pews with their parents, so as to be under supervision. Aunt Polly came, and Tom and Sid and Mary sat with her, Tom being placed next the aisle, in order that he might be as far away from the open window and the seductive outside summer scenes as possible. The crowd filed up the aisles, the aged and needy postmaster, who had seen better days, the mayor and his wife, for they had a mayor there, among other unnecessaries, the justice of the peace, the widow Douglas, fair, smart, and 40, a generous, good-hearted soul and well-to-do, her hill mansion the only palace in the town, and the most hospitable and much the most lavish in the matter of festivities that St. Petersburg could boast, the bent and venerable Major and M.R.S. Ward, lawyer Riverson, the new notable from a distance, next the belle of the village, followed by a troop of long-clad and ribbon-decked young heartbreakers, then all the young clerks in town in a body, for they had stood in the vestibule sucking their cane heads, a circling wall of oiled and simpering admirers, till the last girl had run their gauntlet, and last of all came the model boy, Willie Mufferson, taking as heedful care of his mother as if she were cut glass. He always brought his mother to church, and was the pride of all the matrons. The boys all hated him, he was so good. And besides, he had been thrown up to them so much. His white handkerchief was hanging out of his pocket behind, as usual on Sundays accidentally. Tom had no handkerchief, and he looked upon boys who had as snobs. 05-054.jpg 45K. The congregation being fully assembled, now, the bell rang once more, to warn laggards and stragglers, and then a solemn hush fell upon the church, which was only broken by the tittering and whispering of the choir in the gallery. The choir always tittered and whispered all through service. There was once a church choir that was not ill-bred, but I have forgotten where it was, now. It was a great many years ago, and I can scarcely remember anything about it, but I think it was in some foreign country. The minister gave out the hymn, and read it through with a relish, in a peculiar style which was much admired in that part of the country. His voice began on a medium key and climbed steadily up till it reached a certain point, where it bore with strong emphasis upon the topmost word and then plunged down as if from a springboard. 05-055.jpg 94K. Shall I be car-ri to the skies, on flowery beds of ease, whilst others fight to win the prize, and sail through blood? YC's he was regarded as a wonderful reader. At church sociables he was always called upon to read poetry, and when he was through, the ladies would lift up their hands and let them fall helplessly in their laps, and wall their eyes, and shake their heads, as much as to say, words cannot express it, it is too beautiful for this mortal earth. After the hymn had been sung, the Reverend Mr. Sprague turned himself into a bulletin board, and read off notices of meetings and societies and things till it seemed that the list would stretch out to the crack of doom, a queer custom which is still kept up in America, even in cities, away here in this age of abundant newspapers. Often, the less there is to justify a traditional custom, the harder it is to get rid of it. And now the minister prayed, a good, generous prayer it was, and went into details. It pleaded for the church, and the little children of the church, for the other churches of the village, for the village itself, for the county, for the state officers, for the United States, for the churches of the United States, for Congress, for the President, for the officers of the government, for poor sailors, tossed by stormy seas, for the oppressed millions groaning under the heel of European monarchies and Oriental despotisms, for such as have the light and the good tidings, and yet have not eyes to see nor ears to hear withal, for the heathen in the far islands of the sea, and closed with the supplication that the words he was about to speak might find grace and favor, and be as seed sown in fertile ground, yielding in time a grateful harvest of good. Amen. There was a rustling of dresses, and the standing congregation sat down. The boy whose history this book relates did not enjoy the prayer, he only endured it if he even did that much. He was restive all through it, he kept tally of the details of the prayer, unconsciously for he was not listening, but he knew the ground of old, and the clergyman's regular route over it, and when a little trifle of new matter was interlarded, his ear detected it and his whole nature resented it. He considered additions unfair, and scoundrelly. In the midst of the prayer a fly had lit on the back of the pew in front of him and tortured his spirit by calmly rubbing its hands together, embracing its head with its arms, and polishing it so vigorously that it seemed to almost part company with the body, and the slender thread of a neck was exposed to view, scraping its wings with its hind legs and smoothing them to its body as if they had been coat tails, going through its whole toilet as tranquilly as if it knew it was perfectly safe. As indeed it was, for as sorely as Tom's hands itched to grab for it they did not dare. He believed his soul would be instantly destroyed if he did such a thing while the prayer was going on. But with the closing sentence his hand began to curve and steal forward, and the instant the amen was out the fly was a prisoner of war. His aunt detected the act and made him let it go. The minister gave out his text and droned along monotonously through an argument that was so prosy that many a head by and by began to nod, and yet it was an argument that dealt in limitless fire and brimstone and thinned the predestined elect down to a company so small as to be hardly worth the saving. Tom counted the pages of the sermon. After church he always knew how many pages there had been, but he seldom knew anything else about the discourse. However, this time he was really interested for a little while. The minister made a grand and moving picture of the assembling together of the world's hosts at the millennium, when the lion and the lamb should lie down together and a little child should lead them. But the pathos, the lesson, the moral of the great spectacle were lost upon the boy. He only thought of the conspicuousness of the principal character before the onlooking nations. His face lit with the thought, and he said to himself that he wished he could be that child, if it was a tame lion. 05-057.jpg 49K. Now he lapsed into suffering again, as the dry argument was resumed. Presently he bethought him of a treasure he had and got it out. It was a large black beetle with formidable jaws, a pinch bug, he called it. It was in a percussion cap box. The first thing the beetle did was to take him by the finger. A natural fillip followed. The beetle went floundering into the aisle and lit on its back, and the hurt finger went into the boy's mouth. The beetle lay there working its helpless legs, unable to turn over. Tom eyed it, and longed for it, but it was safe out of his reach. Other people uninterested in the sermon found relief in the beetle, and they eyed it too. Presently a vagrant poodle dog came idling along, sad at heart, lazy with the summer softness and the quiet, weary of captivity, sighing for change. He spied the beetle, the drooping tail lifted and wagged. He surveyed the prize, walked around it, smelt at it from a safe distance, walked around it again, grew bolder, and took a closer smell, then lifted his lip and made a gingerly snatch at it, just missing it, made another, and another, began to enjoy the diversion, subsided to his stomach with the beetle between his paws, and continued his experiments, grew weary at last, and then indifferent and absent-minded. His head nodded, and little by little his chin descended and touched the enemy, who seized it. There was a sharp yelp, a flirt of the poodle's head, and the beetle fell a couple of yards away, and lit on its back once more. The neighboring spectators shook with a gentle inward joy, several faces went behind fans and handkerchiefs, and Tom was entirely happy. The dog looked foolish, and probably felt so, but there was resentment in his heart, too, and a craving for revenge. So he went to the beetle and began a wary attack on it again, jumping at it from every point of a circle, lighting with his forepaws within an inch of the creature, making even closer snatches at it with his teeth, and jerking his head till his ears flapped again. But he grew tired once more, after a while, tried to amuse himself with a fly but found no relief, followed an ant around, with his nose close to the floor, and quickly wearied of that, yawned, sighed, forgot the beetle entirely, and sat down on it. Then there was a wild yelp of agony and the poodle went sailing up the aisle. The yelps continued, and so did the dog. He crossed the house in front of the altar, he flew down the other aisle, he crossed before the doors, he clambered up the home stretch, his anguish grew with his progress, till presently he was but a woolly comet moving in its orbit with the gleam and the speed of light. At last the frantic sufferer sheered from its course, and sprang into its master's lap, he flung it out of the window, and the voice of distress quickly thinned away and died in the distance. 05-058.jpg 50K. By this time the whole church was red-faced and suffocating with suppressed laughter, and the sermon had come to a dead standstill. The discourse was resumed presently, but it went lame and halting, all possibility of impressiveness being at an end, for even the gravest sentiments were constantly being received with a smothered burst of unholy mirth, under cover of some remote pew back, as if the poor parson had said a rarely facetious thing. It was a genuine relief to the whole congregation when the ordeal was over and the benediction pronounced. Tom Sawyer went home quite cheerful, thinking to himself that there was some satisfaction about divine service when there was a bit of variety in it. He had but one marring thought: he was willing that the dog should play with his pinchbug, but he did not think it was upright in him to carry it off. 05-059.jpg 33K. Chapter 6. 06-060.jpg 202K. Monday morning found Tom Sawyer miserable. Monday morning always found him so because it began another week's slow suffering in school. He generally began that day with wishing he had had no intervening holiday. It made the going into captivity and fetters again so much more odious. Tom lay thinking. Presently it occurred to him that he wished he was sick, then he could stay home from school. Here was a vague possibility. He canvassed his system. No ailment was found, and he investigated again. This time he thought he could detect colicky symptoms, and he began to encourage them with considerable hope. But they soon grew feeble, and presently died wholly away. He reflected further. Suddenly he discovered something. One of his upper front teeth was loose. This was lucky. He was about to begin to groan, as a starter, as he called it, when it occurred to him that if he came into court with that argument, his aunt would pull it out, and that would hurt. So he thought he would hold the tooth in reserve for the present, and seek further. Nothing offered for some little time, and then he remembered hearing the doctor tell about a certain thing that laid up a patient for 2 or 3 weeks and threatened to make him lose a finger. So the boy eagerly drew his sore toe from under the sheet and held it up for inspection. But now he did not know the necessary symptoms. However, it seemed well worthwhile to chance it, so he fell to groaning with considerable spirit. But Sid slept on unconscious. Tom groaned louder, and fancied that he began to feel pain in the toe. No result from Sid. Tom was panting with his exertions by this time. He took a rest and then swelled himself up and fetched a succession of admirable groans. Sid snored on. Tom was aggravated. He said, "Sid, Sid," and shook him. This course worked well, and Tom began to groan again. Sid yawned, stretched, then brought himself up on his elbow with a snort, and began to stare at Tom. Tom went on groaning. Sid said, "Tom, say, Tom." No response. "Here, Tom. Tom. What is the matter, Tom?" And he shook him and looked in his face anxiously. Tom moaned out, "Oh, don't, Sid. Don't joggle me." "Why, what's the matter, Tom? I must call Auntie." "No, never mind. It'll be over by and by, maybe." "Don't call anybody." "But I must." "Don't groan so, Tom, it's awful." "How long you been this way?" "Hours." "Ouch." "Oh, don't stir so, Sid, you'll kill me." "Tom, why didn't you wake me sooner?" "Oh, Tom, don't. It makes my flesh crawl to hear you." "Tom, what is the matter?" "I forgive you everything, Sid." Groan. "Everything you've ever done to me. When I'm gone." "Oh, Tom, you ain't dying, are you?" "Don't, Tom, oh, don't." "Maybe. I forgive everybody, Sid." Groan. "Tell em so, Sid." "And Sid, you give my window sash and my cat with one eye to that new girl that's come to town, and tell her." But Sid had snatched his clothes and gone. Tom was suffering in reality, now, so handsomely was his imagination working, and so his groans had gathered quite a genuine tone. Sid flew downstairs and said, "Oh, Aunt Polly, come. Tom's dying." "Dying?" "Yes'm." "Don't wait, come quick." "Rubbish. I don't believe it." But she fled upstairs, nevertheless, with Sid and Mary at her heels. And her face grew white, too, and her lip trembled. When she reached the bedside she gasped out, "You, Tom. Tom, what's the matter with you?" "Oh, Auntie, I'm." "What's the matter with you? What is the matter with you, child?" "Oh, Auntie, my sore toes mortified." The old lady sank down into a chair and laughed a little, then cried a little, then did both together. This restored her and she said, "Tom, what a turn you did give me. Now you shut up that nonsense and climb out of this." The groans ceased and the pain vanished from the toe. The boy felt a little foolish, and he said, "Aunt Polly, it seemed mortified, and it hurt so I never minded my tooth at all." "Your tooth, indeed. What's the matter with your tooth?" "One of them's loose, and it aches perfectly awful." There, now, don't begin that groaning again. Open your mouth." "Well, your tooth is loose, but you're not going to die about that. Mary, get me a silk thread, and a chunk of fire out of the kitchen." Tom said, "Oh, please, Auntie, don't pull it out. It don't hurt any more. I wish I may never stir if it does. Please don't, Auntie. I don't want to stay home from school." 06-063.jpg 54K. "Oh, you don't, Don't you sew all this row was because you thought you'd get to stay home from school and go a-fishing Tom. Tom, I love you so, and you seem to try every way you can to break my old heart with your outrageousness. By this time the dental instruments were ready. The old lady made one end of the silk thread fast to Tom's tooth with a loop and tied the other to the bedpost. Then she seized the chunk of fire and suddenly thrust it almost into the boy's face. The tooth hung dangling by the bedpost, now. But all trials bring their compensations. As Tom wended to school after breakfast, he was the envy of every boy he met because the gap in his upper row of teeth enabled him to orate in a new and admirable way. He gathered quite a following of lads interested in the exhibition, and one that had cut his finger and had been a center of fascination and homage up to this time, now found himself suddenly without an adherent, and shorn of his glory. His heart was heavy, and he said with a disdain which he did not feel that it wasn't anything to spit like Tom Sawyer, but another boy said, "Sour grapes." And he wandered away a dismantled hero. Shortly Tom came upon the juvenile pariah of the village, Huckleberry Finn, son of the town drunkard. Huckleberry was cordially hated and dreaded by all the mothers of the town, because he was idle and lawless and vulgar and bad, and because all their children admired him so, and delighted in his forbidden society, and wished they dared to be like him. Tom was like the rest of the respectable boys, in that he envied Huckleberry his gaudy outcast condition, and was under strict orders not to play with him. So he played with him every time he got a chance. Huckleberry was always dressed in the cast-off clothes of full-grown men, and they were in perennial bloom and fluttering with rags. His hat was a vast ruin with a wide crescent lopped out of its brim. His coat, when he wore one, hung nearly to his heels and had the rearward buttons far down the back, but one suspender supported his trousers. The seat of the trousers bagged low and contained nothing, the fringed legs dragged in the dirt when not rolled up. 06-064.jpg42K. Huckleberry came and went, at his own free will. He slept on doorsteps in fine weather and in empty hogsheads in wet. He did not have to go to school or to church, or call any being master or obey anybody. He could go fishing or swimming when and where he chose, and stay as long as it suited him. Nobody forbade him to fight. He could sit up as late as he pleased. He was always the first boy that went barefoot in the spring and the last to resume leather in the fall. He never had to wash, nor put on clean clothes. He could swear wonderfully. In a word, everything that goes to make life precious that boy had. So thought every harassed, hampered, respectable boy in St. Petersburg. Tom hailed the romantic outcast. "Hello, Huckleberry. Hello yourself, and see how you like it? What's that you got? Dead cat? Lemme see him, Huck. My, he's pretty stiff. Where'd you get him? Bought him off boy. What did you give?" "I give a blue ticket and a bladder that I got at the slaughterhouse." "Where'd you get the blue ticket?" "Bought it off Ben Rogers 2 weeks ago for a hoop stick." "Say, what is dead cats good for, Huck?" "Good for cure warts with." "No." "Is that so? I know something that's better." "I bet you don't." "What is it?" "Why, spunk water." "Spunk water? I wouldn't give a darn for spunk water." "You wouldn't, wouldn't you? Do you ever try it?" "No, I hinty." "But Bob Tanner did." "Who told you so?" "Why, he told Jeff Thatcher, and Jeff told Johnny Baker, and Johnny told Jim Hollis, and Jim told Ben Rogers, and Ben told a nigger, and the nigger told me. There now. Well, what of it? They'll all lie. Leastways all but the nigger. I don't know him. But I never see a nigger that wouldn't lie." "Shucks. Now you tell me how Bob Tanner done it, Huck." Why,
and
he
everything
took and dipped his
actually
hand in a
looked like
rotten
that.
stump
As
where
we
the
shall
rainwater
receive,
was. In the
there we
daytime.
have our first views of
Certainly.
the morning
With his
inside
face to the
Dragon
stump.
Endurance with our Crew
Yes.
7 crew.
Least I reckon so.
And
Did
as
he
you
say
mentioned,
anything?
they are suited up for
I
the
don't
space
reckon
of
he
flight.
did.
They do wear those spacesuits
I
during
don't know.
some of the more
Aha.
dynamic phases of flight. For
Talk
example,
about
during
trying to cure warts with
launch and as
spunk
they
water
reach
such a
orbit, as
blamefool
well
way as
as
that.
docking, undocking, and
Why,
deorbit
that ain't
splashdown. So
going
we
to
are
do
seeing the
any
view
good.
here in the center of your
You got
screen.
to
That's
go all by
Commander
yourself,
Jasmine
to the
Mogel of
middle of the
NASA.
woods,
This is
where
her
you know
first
there's a
space flight.
spunk water stump,
And we are
and just
about
as it's
2
midnight
minutes
you
and
back
20
up
seconds
against the
away from
stump
that
and jam
deorbit
your
burn
hand in and say,
beginning.
barley corn,
Yeah, we did see
barley
that the
corn,
crew did have
engine
their
meal
visors and
shorts,
the open
spunk
position is
water,
allowed for
spunk
now.
water,
We will
swallow
hear
these
from
warts.
SpaceX Core
And
instruction
then
to
walk
the
away
crew
quick,
to close their
11
visors
steps,
and put them in the
with
lock
your eyes
position.
shut,
I
and
can't
then turn
remember off
around
the top of
3
my head
times
if
and
it
walk
comes
home
prior
without
to
speaking
deorbit
to
burn
anybody.
or prior to
Because if you
the
speak the
reentry
charm's
phase, but
busted.
we'll find out soon enough.
Well, that
And
sounds
that
like a
deorbit
good
burn
way,
again will place
but that
Dragon
ain't
on
the
a
way Bob
precise
Tanner
trajectory
done.
to return to the
No,
splashdown zone,
sir,
which is
you
targeted
can bet
for
he
off the
didn't,
coast of
because he's the wartiest boy in this town, and he wouldn't have a wart on him if he'd knowed how to work spunk water.
Once it begins.
I've took off thousands of warts off of my hands that way,
So
Huck.
at this point, we're now
I
about
play
1
with
minute and 30
frogs so
seconds
much
away
that
from
I've
that
always
deorbit
got
burn beginning.
considerable many warts.
Again, we're getting another
Sometimes I
view
take M
inside
off
of
with a
Dragon
bean.
here. On your left is
Yes, bean's
Roscosmos
good.
cosmonaut
I've
Konstantin
done that.
Borisov.
Have
And
you
then to
what's your
his
way?
right
You
is
take and
Philip
split the
Isov,
bean,
European Space
and cut the
Agency
wart so
astronaut
as
Pete
to get some
Wilkinson,
blood,
NASA
and then
astronaut
you put
Jasmine
the blood on
Mogel,
one
and
piece of the
Japan
bean and take
Aerospace
and dig a hole and
Exploration
bury it about
Agency
midnight at the
astronaut
crossroads in the
Konstantin
dark of the
Kurkov on the
moon,
far right.
and
So
then
now
you
we're getting
burn up
another
the rest
view
of the bean.
Konstantin Borisov.
You see that piece that's
And
got
you
the
might be able to
blood
see
on
them a
it
couple
will
times.
keep
They are
drawing
suited
and
up for
drawing,
this phase of
trying to
flight
fetch
and
the other
will
piece
remain
to
in
it,
their spacesuits
and
all
so
the
that
way
helps the
through
blood to draw the
the
wart,
deorbit burn
and
through
pretty soon off she
splashdown, and
comes.
as they
Yes,
get
that's
onto
it,
the recovery
Huck,
vessel,
that's it, though when you're burying it if you
as
say
well
down bean,
as
off
they
wart, come no more to
egress
bother
or
me,
exit
it's better.
Dragon.
That's the way Joe Harper does, and he's been nearly
Now,
to
when the
Coonville and
crew
most everywheres.
egresses from the capsule,
But say,
they
how
will
do you cure
utilize the
M with
side
dead
hatch, which is
cats?
actually
Why,
in view
you
right
take
here.
your cat and
It
go
was
and get
that
in the graveyard
if
long
a
about midnight when
pencil
somebody
had
that
blood
was wicked has
outlines
been
at the feet
buried,
of the crew,
and when it's
that is
midnight
the
a
side
devil will
hatch. It
come,
has
or
been
maybe 2 or
closed
3,
since when
but
they
you can't
egressed
see
the
M,
capsule
you
on
can
launch
only
day.
hear something like the
So
wind, or
there's
maybe
a
hear
window
M
up at the
talk,
International Space
and when
Station.
they're
They
taking
utilize
that
the
feller
forward
away,
hatch, which is the
you
hatch
heave
at the
your
top
cat
of the
after
capsule,
M and say,
because
devil
that's where
follow
the international
corpse,
docking
cat
adapter is
follow
located,
devil,
and that's what
warts
docks
follow
to
cat,
the
I'm done
space
with
station
yet.
and allows them to
That'll fetch
ingress and
any wart.
egress onto the
Sounds
station
right.
and into the capsule
Do
during
you
their
ever try it, Huck?
stay. So
No, but
and we
old
just got a
Mother
call out
Hopkins
saying
told
that
me.
deorbit burn has
Well,
begun.
I reckon it's
This
so,
burn is expected
then.
to last for about 14
Because
minutes.
they say she's a
And
witch.
just a quick recap here.
Say.
Within the last 10 minutes, Dragon
Why,
has jettisoned
Tom,
its trunk
I know she
and
is.
initiated that deorbit
She witched
burn
Pap.
just seconds ago.
Pap
20
says so
seconds
his
ago,
own
and
self.
it is a
He
little
come
less than
along one
14
day,
minutes,
and he see
in
she
all.
was a-witching him,
So for these
so he took
operations,
up a
NASA
rock,
and SpaceX
and
do
if she
closely
hadn't
coordinate
dodged,
with the United
he'd a
States
got
Coast
her.
Guard to establish
Well,
a safety
that
zone
very
to
night he
ensure
rolled
public
off and
safety
a shed
and for the safety of
wher he
all
was
those
a-layin'
involved in the
drunk,
recovery
and broke his
operations,
arm.
as well as the crew on
Why,
board the returning
that's
spacecraft.
awful.
Multiple
How did he know
notices
she was
regarding
a-witching
splashdown
him?
are issued to the
Lord,
mariners in
Pap
advance
can
and
tell,
during recovery
easy.
operations, and Coast
Pap
Guard
says when they
patrol
keep
boats are
looking at you
deployed
right
to
steady,
discourage boaters
they're
from entering
a-witching
the
you.
splashdown zones.
Especially
So
if
we
they
do
mumble.
really want to stress to the
Because
public
when
that
they
they
mumble
do
they're
respect
saying the
this
Lord's
safety
Prayer
zone.
backwards.
Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a hazardous operation, and any other boats
06-067.jpg48K.
interfering increases the risk
Say,
to the
Hucky,
astronauts in the capsule,
when you going
the
to
teams
try the
working to
cat?
recover them from the water,
Tonight.
and the safety of
I
those that
reckon
come
they'll
too
come
close.
after
So
old
for the
Hoss
safety of the
Williams
crew
tonight.
and your safety,
But they
we do
buried
recommend
him
you sit back
Saturday.
and watch, and we'll continue
Didn't
to
they
bring
get
you
him
the best
Saturday night?
possible views of our
Why,
astronauts'
how you
homecoming.
talk?
Like
How
I
could their
mentioned
charms
earlier,
work
this
till
deorbit
midnight
burn
and
is
then
the
it's
last
Sunday?
time that those 4
Devils
forward
don't
deorbit
slosh
thrusters will
around much
fire.
of a Sunday. Sunday, I don't reckon. I never thought of that. That's so. Let me go with you. Of course if you ain't afeard. Afeard. Tainty likely. Will you meow? Yes, and you meow back, if you get a chance. Last time, you kept me meowing around till old Hayes went to throwing rocks at me and says darn that cat, and so I hove a brick through his window, but don't you tell. I won't. I couldn't meow that night, because Auntie was watching me, but I'll meow this time. Say what's that? Nothing but a tick. Where'd you get him? Out in the woods. What'll you take for him? I don't know. I don't want to sell him. All right. It's a mighty small tick, anyway. Oh, anybody can run a tick down that don't belong to them. I'm satisfied with it. It's a good enough tick for me. Show, there's ticks aplenty. I could have 1,000 of them if I wanted to. Well, why don't you? Because you know mighty well you can't. This is a pretty early tick, I reckon. It's the first one I've seen this year. Say, Huck, I'll give you my tooth for him. Let's see it. Tom got out a bit of paper and carefully unrolled it. Huckleberry viewed it wistfully. The temptation was very strong. At last he said, "Is it genuine?" Tom lifted his lip and showed the vacancy. "Well, all right," said Huckleberry, "it's a trade." Tom enclosed the tick in the percussion cap box that had lately been the pinchbug's prison, and the boys separated, each feeling wealthier than before. When Tom reached the little isolated frame schoolhouse, he strode in briskly, with the manner of one who had come with all honest speed. He hung his hat on a peg and flung himself into his seat with business-like alacrity. The master, throned on high in his great splint-bottom armchair, was dozing, lulled by the drowsy hum of study. The interruption roused him. Thomas Sawyer. Tom knew that when his name was pronounced in full, it meant trouble. "Sir, come up here. Now, sir, why are you late again, as usual?" Tom was about to take refuge in a lie, when he saw two long tails of yellow hair hanging down a back that he recognized by the electric sympathy of love, and by that form was the only vacant place on the girls' side of the schoolhouse. He instantly said, "I stopped to talk with Huckleberry Finn." The master's pulse stood still, and he stared helplessly. The buzz of study ceased. The pupils wondered if this foolhardy boy had lost his mind. The master said, You did what?" "Stopped to talk with Huckleberry Finn." There was no mistaking the words. "Thomas Sawyer, this is the most astounding confession I have ever listened to. No mere feral will answer for this offense. Take off your jacket." 06-069.jpg 48K. The master's arm performed until it was tired and the stock of switches notably diminished. Then the order followed, "Now, sir, go and sit with the girls. And let this be a warning to you." The titter that rippled around the room appeared to abash the boy, but in reality that result was caused rather more by his worshipful awe of his unknown idol and the dread pleasure that lay in his high good fortune. He sat down upon the end of the pine bench and the girl hitched herself away from him with a toss of her head. Nudges and winks and whispers traversed the room, but Tom sat still, with his arms upon the long, low desk before him, and seemed to study his book. By and by attention ceased from him, and the accustomed school murmur rose upon the dull air once more. Presently the boy began to steal furtive glances at the girl. She observed it, made a mouth at him and gave him the back of her head for the space of a minute. When she cautiously faced around again, a peach lay before her. She thrust it away. Tom gently put it back. She thrust it away again, but with less animosity. Tom patiently returned it to its place. Then she let it remain. Tom scrawled on his slate, "Please take it, I got more."
Now we are waiting to hear
The girl
call-out
glanced
for
at the words,
Ronald Byrne
but made no
to
sign.
completion of the
Now
Taylor
the boy
Byrne
began to
Ford
draw
project
something on the
improvements.
slate,
As we
hiding
mentioned
his work with
earlier,
his left hand.
have views of the capsule
For a
we will
time the
link
girl
into, but
refused to
due to
notice,
press and coverage,
but her
unfortunately,
human
we don't have
curiosity
the entire
presently
show.
began to
The
manifest
crew is
itself
in their
by
seats. They
hardly
have their suits
perceptible
on,
signs.
and they
The boy
are
worked
continuing
on,
to monitor
apparently
driving,
unconscious.
as on
The
its
girl
way
made a
back
sort
to
of
Earth.
non-committal
It's,
attempt
like
to
we mentioned
see,
before, it's
but
heading
the
to
boy did not
Pensacola,
betray
Florida,
that he was
located
aware of
in
it.
the Gulf of
At
Mexico.
last she gave in and
On your
hesitatingly
screen
whispered,
now is a live
"Let me
view
see
of
it."
Mission Control Hostel, where
06-070.jpg26k. Tom partly uncovered a dismal caricature of a house with two gable ends to it and a corkscrew of smoke issuing from the chimney. Then the girl's interest began to fasten itself upon the work and she forgot everything else. When it was finished, she gazed a moment, then whispered, "It's nice make a man." The artist erected a man in the front yard, that resembled a derrick. He could have stepped over the house, but the girl was not hypercritical, she was satisfied with the monster, and whispered, "It's a beautiful man, now make me coming along." Tom drew an hourglass with a full moon and straw limbs to it and armed the spreading fingers with a portentous fan. The girl said, "It's ever so nice, I wish I could draw." "It's easy," whispered Tom, "I'll learn you." "Oh, will you when?" "At noon." "Do you go home to dinner?" "I'll stay if you will." "Good, that's a whack." "What's your name?" "Becky Thatcher." "What's yours?" "Oh, I know. It's Thomas Sawyer. That's the name they lick me by. I'm Tom when I'm good. You call me Tom, will you?" "Yes." Now Tom began to scrawl something on the slate, hiding the words from the girl. But she was not backward this time. She begged to see. Tom said, "Oh, it ain't anything." "Yes it is." "No it ain't. You don't want to see."
Let's talk
"Yes I do,
more,
indeed I do." "Please let me." "You'll tell."
Graduation.
"No I
NASA
won't, deed and
welcomed
double
its
deed
newest
won't.
class of,
You
next
won't tell
generation
anybody at
Artemis
all
astronauts
ever,
in a
as
ceremony
long as you
at the
live.
agency's Johnson
No,
Space Center in
I won't
Houston
ever tell
just
anybody.
last week on March
Now
5th.
let me.
Selected for training
Oh,
in
you don't
2021,
want to
the
see.
astronaut graduates
Now
were
that you treat
chosen
me
from a
so,
pool of
I
more
will
than
see.
12,000
And she put her
applicants. Wow,
small
just
hand
incredible.
upon his and a little
And
scuffle
successfully
ensued,
completed more than
Tom pretending to
more than
resist
2
in
years of
earnest but
required
letting his
basic
hand
training,
slip by
including
degrees till these
spacewalking,
words were
robotics,
revealed,
space station
"I love
systems,
you."
and more. The
"Oh,
graduating
you
NASA
bad thing."
astronauts, I will
And
let
she hit
you
his
know
hand a
all the
smart
names,
rap,
as I'm sure you've
but
practiced them
reddened and looked
many
pleased.
times.
Nevertheless, just at this juncture the boy felt a slow, fateful grip closing on his ear, and a steady lifting impulse. In that wise he was borne across the house and deposited in his own seat, under a peppering fire of giggles from the whole school. Then the master stood over him during a few awful moments, and finally moved away to his throne without saying a word. But although Tom's ear tingled, his heart was jubilant. 06-071.jpg46k. As the school quieted down, Tom made an honest effort to study, but the turmoil within him was too great. In turn he took his place in the reading class and made a botch of it, then in the geography class and turned lakes into mountains, mountains into rivers, and rivers into continents, till chaos was come again, then in the spelling class, and got turned down, by a succession of mere baby words, till he brought up at the foot and yielded up the pewter medal which he had worn with ostentation for months. Chapter 7 07-072.jpg175k. The harder Tom tried to fasten his mind on his book, the more his ideas wandered. So at last, with a sigh and a yawn, he gave it up. It seemed to him that the noon recess would never come. The air was utterly dead. There was not a breath stirring. It was the sleepiest of sleepy days. The drowsing murmur of the 5 and 20 studying scholars soothed the soul like the spell that is in the murmur of bees. Away off in the flaming sunshine, Cardiff Hill lifted its soft green sides through a shimmering veil of heat, tinted with the purple of distance. A few birds floated on lazy wing high in the air. No other living thing was visible but some cows, and they were asleep. Tom's heart ached to be free, or else to have something of interest to do to pass the dreary time. His hand wandered into his pocket and his face lit up with a glow of gratitude that was prayer, though he did not know it. Then furtively the percussion cap box came out. He released the tick and put him on the long flat desk. The creature probably glowed with a gratitude that amounted to prayer, too, at this moment, but it was premature, for when he started thankfully to travel off, Tom turned him aside with a pin and made him take a new direction. Tom's bosom friend sat next him, suffering just as Tom had been, and now he was deeply and gratefully interested in this entertainment in an instant. This bosom friend was Joe Harper. The two boys were sworn friends all the week, and embattled enemies on Saturdays. Joe took a pin out of his lapel and began to assist in exercising the prisoner. The sport grew in interest momently. Soon Tom said that they were interfering with each other, and neither getting the fullest benefit of the tick. So he put Joe's slate on the desk and drew a line down the middle of it from top to bottom. "Now," said he, "as long as he is on your side you can stir him up and I'll let him alone, but if you let him get away and get on my side, you're to leave him alone as long as I can keep him from crossing over. All right, go ahead, start him up." The tick escaped from Tom, presently, and crossed the equator. Joe harassed him a while, and then he got away and crossed back again. This change of base occurred often. While one boy was worrying the tick with absorbing interest, the other would look on with interest as strong, the two heads bowed together over the slate, and the two souls dead to all things else. At last luck seemed to settle and abide with Joe. The tick tried this, that, and the other course, and got as excited and as anxious as the boys themselves, but time and again just as he would have victory in his very grasp, so to speak, and Tom's fingers would be twitching to begin, Joe's pin would deftly head him off, and keep possession. At last Tom could stand it no longer. The temptation was too strong. So he reached out and lent a hand with his pin. Joe was angry in a moment. Said he, "Tom, you let him alone. I only just want to stir him up a little." Joe: "No, sir, it ain't fair, you just let him alone." "Blame it, I ain't going to stir him much. Let him alone, I tell you." "I won't. You shall, he's on my side of the line." "Look here, Joe Harper, whose is that tick?" "I don't care whose tick he is, he's on my side of the line, and you shan't touch him." "Well, I'll just bet I will, though. He's my tick and I'll do what I blame please with him, or die." A tremendous whack came down on Tom's shoulders, and its duplicate on Joe's, and for the space of 2 minutes the dust continued to fly from the two jackets and the whole school to enjoy it. The boys had been too absorbed to notice the hush that had stolen upon the school a while before when the master came tiptoeing down the room and stood over them. He had contemplated a good part of the performance before he contributed his bit of variety to it. When school broke up at noon, Tom flew to Becky Thatcher, and whispered in her ear, "Put on your bonnet and let on you're going home, and when you get to the corner, give the rest of 'em the slip, and turn down through the lane and come back. I'll go the other way and come it over 'em the same way." So the one went off with one group of scholars, and the other with another. In a little while the two met at the bottom of the lane, and when they reached the school they had it all to themselves. Then they sat together, with the slate before them, and Tom gave Becky the pencil and held her hand in his, guiding it, and so created another surprising house. When the interest in art began to wane, the two fell to talking. Tom was swimming in bliss. He said, "Do you love rats?" "No. I hate them." "Well, I do, two live ones. But I mean dead ones, to swing round your head with a string." "No, I don't care for rats much, anyway. What I like is chewing gum." "Oh, I should say so. I wish I had some now." "Do you? I've got some. I'll let you chew it a while, but you must give it back to me." That was agreeable, so they chewed it turnabout, and dangled their legs against the bench in excess of contentment. "Was you ever at a circus?" said Tom. "Yes, and my pa's going to take me again sometime, if I'm good. I've been to the circus 3 or 4 times, lots of times. Church ain't chucks to a circus. There's things going on at a circus all the time. I'm going to be a clown in a circus when I grow up." "Oh, are you? That will be nice. They're so lovely, all spotted up." "Yes, that's so. And they get slathers of money, most $1 a day," Ben Rogers says. "Say, Becky, was you ever engaged?" "What's that?" "Why, engaged to be married." "No. Would you like to?" "I reckon so. I don't know. What is it like?" "Like why, it ain't like anything. You only just tell a boy you won't ever have anybody but him, ever ever ever, and then you kiss and that's all. Anybody can do it." "Kiss? What do you kiss for?" "Why, that, you know, is to, well, they always do that." "Everybody?" "Why, yes, everybody that's in love with each other. Do you remember what I wrote on the slate?" "Yeah, yes. What was it?" "I shan't tell you." "Shall I tell you?" "Yeah, yes, but some other time." "No, now." "No, not now, tomorrow." "Oh, no, now. Please, Becky, I'll whisper it. I'll whisper it ever so easy." Becky hesitating, Tom took silence for consent, and passed his arm about her waist and whispered the tale ever so softly, with his mouth close to her ear. And then he added, "Now you whisper it to me just the same." She resisted, for a while, and then said, "You turn your face away so you can't see, and then I will." "But you mustn't ever tell anybody, will you, Tom? Now you won't, will you?" "No, indeed, indeed I won't. Now, Becky." He turned his face away. She bent timidly around till her breath stirred his curls and whispered, "I love you." Then she sprang away and ran around and around the desks and benches, with Tom after her, and took refuge in a corner at last, with her little white apron to her face. Tom clasped her about her neck and pleaded, "Now, Becky, it's all done, all over but the kiss. Don't you be afraid of that, it ain't anything at all. Please, Becky." And he tugged at her apron and the hands. By and by she gave up, and let her hands drop. Her face, all glowing with the struggle, came up and submitted. Tom kissed the red lips and said, "Now it's all done, Becky. And always after this, you know, you ain't ever to love anybody but me, and you ain't ever to marry anybody but me, ever, never and forever. Will you?" "No, I'll never love anybody but you, Tom, and I'll never marry anybody but you, and you ain't to ever marry anybody but me, either." "Certainly. Of course. That's part of it. And always coming to school or when we're going home, you're to walk with me, when there ain't anybody looking, and you choose me and I choose you at parties, because that's the way you do when you're engaged. It's so nice. I never heard of it before." Oh, it's ever so gay. Why, me and Amy Lawrence. The big eyes told Tom his blunder and he stopped, confused. Oh, Tom. Then I ain't the first you've ever been engaged to. The child began to cry. Tom said, "Oh, don't cry, Becky, I don't care for her anymore." "Yes, you do, Tom, you know you do." 07-077.jpg 52K. Tom tried to put his arm about her neck, but she pushed him away and turned her face to the wall, and went on crying. Tom tried again, with soothing words in his mouth, and was repulsed again. Then his pride was up, and he strode away and went outside. He stood about, restless and uneasy, for a while, glancing at the door, every now and then, hoping she would repent and come to find him. But she did not. Then he began to feel badly and fear that he was in the wrong. It was a hard struggle with him to make new advances, now, but he nerved himself to it and entered. She was still standing back there in the corner, sobbing, with her face to the wall. Tom's heart smote him. He went to her and stood a moment, not knowing exactly how to proceed. Then he said hesitatingly, "Becky, I don't care for anybody but you." No reply but sobs. Becky pleadingly, "Becky, won't you say something?" More sobs. Tom got out his chiefest jewel, a brass knob from the top of an andiron, and passed it around her so that she could see it, and said, "Please, Becky, won't you take it?" She struck it to the floor. Then Tom marched out of the house and over the hills and far away, to return to school no more that day. Presently Becky began to suspect. She ran to the door, he was not in sight. She flew around to the play yard, he was not there. Then she called, "Tom, come back, Tom." She listened intently, but there was no answer. She had no companions but silence and loneliness. So she sat down to cry again and upbraid herself, and by this time the scholars began to gather again, and she had to hide her griefs and still her broken heart and take up the cross of a long, dreary, aching afternoon, with none among the strangers about her to exchange sorrows with. 07-078.jpg 53K. Chapter 8. 08-079.jpg 195K. Tom dodged hither and thither through lanes until he was well out of the track of returning scholars, and then fell into a moody jog. He crossed a small branch 2 or 3 times, because of a prevailing juvenile superstition that to cross water baffled pursuit. Half an hour later he was disappearing behind the Douglas mansion on the summit of Cardiff Hill, and the schoolhouse was hardly distinguishable away off in the valley behind him. He entered a dense wood, picked his pathless way to the center of it, and sat down on a mossy spot under a spreading oak. There was not even a zephyr stirring, the dead noonday heat had even stilled the songs of the birds. Nature lay in a trance that was broken by no sound but the occasional far-off hammering of a woodpecker, and this seemed to render the pervading silence and sense of loneliness the more profound. The boy's soul was steeped in melancholy, his feelings were in happy accord with his surroundings. He sat long with his elbows on his knees and his chin in his hands, meditating. It seemed to him that life was but a trouble, at best, and he more than half envied Jimmy Hodges, so lately released. It must be very peaceful, he thought, to lie and slumber and dream forever and ever, with the wind whispering through the trees and caressing the grass and the flowers over the grave, and nothing to bother and grieve about, ever any more. If he only had a clean Sunday school record he could be willing to go, and be done with it all. Now as to this girl, what had he done? Nothing. He had meant the best in the world, and been treated like a dog, like a very dog. She would be sorry someday, maybe, when it was too late. If he could only die temporarily. But the elastic heart of youth cannot be compressed into one constrained shape long at a time. Tom presently began to drift insensibly back into the concerns of this life again. What if he turned his back, now, and disappeared mysteriously? What if he went away ever so far away, into unknown countries beyond the seas, and never came back anymore? How would she feel then? The idea of being a clown recurred to him now, only to fill him with disgust. For frivolity and jokes and spotted tights were an offense, when they intruded themselves upon a spirit that was exalted into the vague august realm of the romantic. No, he would be a soldier, and return after long years, all war-worn and illustrious. No, better still, he would join the Indians, and hunt buffaloes and go on the warpath in the mountain ranges and the trackless great plains of the far west, and away in the future come back a great chief, bristling with feathers, hideous with paint, and prance into Sunday school, some drowsy summer morning, with a blood-curdling war whoop, and sear the eyeballs of all his companions with unappeasable envy. But no, there was something gaudier even than this. He would be a pirate. That was it. Now his future lay plain before him, and glowing with unimaginable splendor. How his name would fill the world, and make people shudder. How gloriously he would go plowing the dancing seas, in his long, low, black-hulled racer, the spirit of the storm, with his grisly flag flying at the fore. And at the zenith of his fame, how he would suddenly appear at the old village and stalk into church, brown and weather-beaten, in his black velvet doublet and trunks, his great jack boots, his crimson sash, his belt bristling with horse pistols, his crime-rusted cutlass at his side, his slouch hat with waving plumes, his black flag unfurled, with the skull and crossbones on it, and hear with swelling ecstasy the whisperings, "It's Tom Sawyer the pirate, the Black Avenger of the Spanish Main." 08-081.jpg 99K. Yes, it was settled, his career was determined. He would run away from home and enter upon it. He would start the very next morning. Therefore he must now begin to get ready. He would collect his resources together. He went to a rotten log near at hand and began to dig under one end of it with his Barlow knife. He soon struck wood that sounded hollow. He put his hand there and uttered this incantation impressively, "What hasn't come here, come. What's here, stay here." Then he scraped away the dirt, and exposed a pine shingle. He took it up and disclosed a shapely little treasure house whose bottom and sides were of shingles. In it lay a marble. Tom's astonishment was boundless. He scratched his head with a perplexed air, and said, "Well, that beats anything." Then he tossed the marble away pettishly, and stood cogitating. The truth was, that a superstition of his had failed, here, which he and all his comrades had always looked upon as infallible. If you buried a marble with certain necessary incantations, and left it alone a fortnight, and then opened the place with the incantation he had just used, you would find that all the marbles you had ever lost had gathered themselves together there. Meantime, no matter how widely they had been separated. But now, this thing had actually and unquestionably failed. Tom's whole structure of faith was shaken to its foundations. He had many a time heard of this thing succeeding but never of its failing before. It did not occur to him that he had tried it several times before, himself, but could never find the hiding places afterward. He puzzled over the matter some time, and finally decided that some witch had interfered and broken the charm. He thought he would satisfy himself on that point, so he searched around till he found a small sandy spot with a little funnel-shaped depression in it. He laid himself down and put his mouth close to this depression and called, "Doodlebug, Doodlebug, tell me what I want to know. Doodlebug, Doodlebug, tell me what I want to know." The sand began to work, and presently a small black bug appeared for a second and then darted under again in a fright. He dasn't tell. So it was a witch that done it. I just knowed it. He well knew the futility of trying to contend against witches, so he gave up discouraged. But it occurred to him that he might as well have the marble he had just thrown away, and therefore he went and made a patient search for it. But he could not find it. Now he went back to his treasure house and carefully placed himself just as he had been standing when he tossed the marble away. Then he took another marble from his pocket and tossed it in the same way, saying, "Brother, go find your brother." He watched where it stopped, and went there and looked. But it must have fallen short or gone too far, so he tried twice more. The last repetition was successful. The two marbles lay within a foot of each other. Just here the blast of a toy tin trumpet came faintly down the green aisles of the forest. Tom flung off his jacket and trousers, turned a suspender into a belt, raked away some brush behind the rotten log, disclosing a rude bow and arrow, a lath sword and a tin trumpet, and in a moment had seized these things and bounded away, bare-legged, with fluttering shirt. He presently halted under a great elm, blew an answering blast, and then began to tiptoe and look warily out, this way and that. He said cautiously to an imaginary company, "Hold, my merry men. Keep hid till I blow." Now appeared Joe Harper, as airily clad and elaborately armed as Tom. Tom called, "Hold. Who comes here into Sherwood Forest without my pass?" 08-083.jpg 58K. Guy of Goisborne wants no man's pass. Who art thou that dares to hold such language, said Tom, prompting, for they talked by the book, from memory. Who art thou that dares to hold such language? I, indeed, I am Robin Hood, as thy caitiff carcase soon shall know. Then art thou indeed that famous outlaw, right gladly will I dispute with thee the passes of the merry wood. Have at thee. They took their lath swords, dumped their other traps on the ground, struck a fencing attitude, foot to foot, and began a grave, careful combat, 2 up and 2 down. Presently Tom said, "Now, if you've got the hang, go it lively." So they went it lively, panting and perspiring with the work. By and by Tom shouted, "Fall! Fall! Why don't you fall? I shan't. Why don't you fall yourself? You're getting the worst of it." "Why, that ain't anything. I can't fall, that ain't the way it is in the book. The book says," then with one backhanded stroke he slung poor Guy of Goisborne, "you're to turn around and let me hit you in the back." There was no getting around the authorities, so Joe turned, received the whack and fell. "Now," said Joe, getting up, "you got to let me kill you." "That's fair." "Why, I can't do that, it ain't in the book." "Well, it's blamed mean, that's all." "Well, say, Joe, you can be Friar Tuck or Much the miller's son, and lam me with a quarter staff, or I'll be the Sheriff of Nottingham and you be Robin Hood a little while and kill me." This was satisfactory, and so these adventures were carried out. Then Tom became Robin Hood again, and was allowed by the treacherous nun to bleed his strength away through his neglected wound. And at last Joe, representing a whole tribe of weeping outlaws, dragged him sadly forth, gave his bow into his feeble hands, and Tom said, "Where this arrow falls, there bury poor Robin Hood under the greenwood tree." Then he shot the arrow and fell back and would have died, but he lit on a nettle and sprang up too gaily for a corpse. 08-084.jpg 49K. The boys dressed themselves, hid their accoutrements, and went off grieving that there were no outlaws anymore, and wondering what modern civilization could claim to have done to compensate for their loss. They said they would rather be outlaws a year in Sherwood Forest than President of the United States forever. Chapter 9 09-085.jpg 174K. At 9:30 that night, Tom and Sid were sent to bed, as usual. They said their prayers, and Sid was soon asleep. Tom lay awake and waited, in restless impatience. When it seemed to him that it must be nearly daylight, he heard the clock strike 10. This was despair. He would have tossed and fidgeted, as his nerves demanded, but he was afraid he might wake Sid. So he lay still, and stared up into the dark. Everything was dismally still. By and by, out of the stillness, little, scarcely perceptible noises began to emphasize themselves. The ticking of the clock began to bring itself into notice. Old beams began to crack mysteriously. The stairs creaked faintly. Evidently spirits were abroad. A measured, muffled snore issued from Aunt Polly's chamber, and now the tiresome chirping of a cricket that no human ingenuity could locate, began. Next the ghastly ticking of a death watch in the wall at the bed's head made Tom shudder. It meant that somebody's days were numbered. Then the howl of a far-off dog rose on the night air, and was answered by a fainter howl from a remoter distance. Tom was in an agony. At last he was satisfied that time had ceased and eternity begun. He began to doze. In spite of himself, the clock chimed 11, but he did not hear it. And then there came, mingling with his half-formed dreams, a most melancholy caterwauling. The raising of a neighboring window disturbed him. A cry of "Scat! You devil!" and the crash of an empty bottle against the back of his aunt's woodshed brought him wide awake, and a single minute later he was dressed and out of the window and creeping along the roof of the L on all fours. He meowed with caution once or twice, as he went, then jumped to the roof of the woodshed and thence to the ground. Huckleberry Finn was there, with his dead cat. The boys moved off and disappeared in the gloom. At the end of half an hour they were wading through the tall grass of the graveyard. 09-086.jpg 52K. It was a graveyard of the old-fashioned western kind. It was on a hill, about 1.5 miles from the village. It had a crazy board fence around it, which leaned inward in places, and outward the rest of the time, but stood upright nowhere. Grass and weeds grew rank over the whole cemetery. All the old graves were sunken in, there was not a tombstone on the place. Round-topped, worm-eaten boards staggered over the graves, leaning for support and finding none. Sacred to the memory of so-and-so had been painted on them once, but it could no longer have been read, on the most of them, now, even if there had been light. A faint wind moaned through the trees, and Tom feared it might be the spirits of the dead, complaining at being disturbed. The boys talked little, and only under their breath, for the time and the place and the pervading solemnity and silence oppressed their spirits. They found the sharp new heap they were seeking, and ensconced themselves within the protection of 3 great elms that grew in a bunch within a few feet of the grave. Then they waited in silence for what seemed a long time. The hooting of a distant owl was all the sound that troubled the dead stillness. Tom's reflections grew oppressive. He must force some talk. So he said in a whisper, "Hucky, do you believe the dead people like it for us to be here?" Huckleberry whispered, "I wished I knowed. It's awful solemn like, ain't it?" "I bet it is." There was a considerable pause, while the boys canvassed this matter inwardly. Then Tom whispered, "Say, Hucky, do you reckon Hoss Williams hears us talking?" "O' course he does. Least his sperrit does." Tom, after a pause, "I wish I'd said Mr. Williams. But I never meant any harm. Everybody calls him Hoss. A body can't be too particular how they talk 'bout these yer dead people, Tom."
that help to
This was a
stabilize the
damper,
capsule
and
help to
conversation
accelerate
died
it
again.
further.
Presently
Down to about
Tom seized his
119
comrade's arm
horsepower
and
at
said,
that point in time,
"SH,
and that's roughly at about
what is it?"
6,500
Tom and the
feet
two
above
clung
the ocean
together with
surface.
beating
The main
hearts.
parachutes will deploy.
"SH,
And once again, we will
there
hopefully
'tis
bring you
again.
views once we have those.
Didn't you hear it?
And then, of course, once
I.
those main parachutes deploy,
There.
it's just a
Now
few
you hear
seconds.
it?
Excuse me, it's actually
Lord,
a few seconds.
Tom,
It's
they're coming.
you know, several thousand
They're
feet
coming,
off the ocean
sure.
floor, ocean
What'll
surface,
we
excuse
do?
me.
I
But
dunno.
ultimately, those main parachutes
Think
will
they'll
help
see
to
us.
accelerate the capsule down
Oh,
to about 15,
Tom,
16 miles
they
per
can
hour,
see in the dark,
when it
same as
ultimately
cats.
splashes down. And we are
I wished
expecting
I
that
hadn't
splashdown
come.
time to occur
Oh,
at
don't be
5:47
afeard.
a.m. Eastern time,
I don't believe
2:47
they'll
a.m.
bother us.
Pacific time.
We ain't doing any harm. If we keep perfectly still, maybe they won't notice us at all. I'll try to, Tom, but, Lord, I'm all of a shiver. Listen. The boys bent their heads together and scarcely breathed. A muffled sound of voices floated up from the far end of the graveyard. "Look. See there," whispered Tom. "What is it?" "It's devil fire." "Oh, Tom, this is awful." Some vague figures approached through the gloom, swinging an old-fashioned tin lantern that freckled the ground with innumerable little spangles of light. Presently Huckleberry whispered with a shudder, "It's the devils sure enough. 3 of 'em. Lordy, Tom, we're goners. Can you pray?" "I'll try, but don't you be afeard. They ain't going to hurt us. Now I lay me down to sleep." I. 09-088.jpg48K. "SH. What is it, Huck?" "They're humans. One of 'em is, anyway." One of 'em's old Muff Potter's voice. "No tainty so, is it? I bet I know it. Don't you stir nor budge. He ain't sharp enough to notice us."
Yeah, this view is,
"Drunk,
a thermal
the same as
view,
usual,
tracking
likely
down from
blamed
the
old Rip.
B-57 plane.
All right,
I
I'll keep
always
still.
love seeing this come
Now
through
they're
because
stuck.
just the
Can't
brightness
find it.
gives you a good idea
Here they come
of,
again.
and it will start to get
Now
dimmer
they're
and
hot.
dimmer,
Cold
as we get
again.
closer to the
Hot
drone
again.
parachute deployment.
Red hot.
This looks like
They're
it is a
peeing
live view
right,
coming
this
from
time.
Megan, which is the recovery vessel,
Say, Huck,
positioned a
I
safe
know
distance
another
away
o'
from
them
the
voices.
anticipated
It's
splashdown
Injun
site.
Joe.
I believe this is the
That's
tracking
so that
cam,
murderin'
not
half-breed.
thermal, more,
I'd druther they was devils a dern
not
sight.
sure the right way to describe
What
it,
can
but
they
it's
be up
it's
to?
a live view camera,
The
but
whisper died
adjusted
wholly
for the
out.
darkness,
Now, for the
of
3 men
night
had
sky.
reached the
So
grave
that's
and
why
stood
the
within a
pixels
few
on the
feet of
camera
the boy's
might
hiding
look,
place.
a little wonky
"Here
there.
it is," said the third voice, and the owner of it held the lantern up and revealed the face of young Dr. Robinson. Potter and Injun Joe were carrying a hand barrow with a rope and a couple of shovels on it. They cast down their load and began to open the grave. The doctor put the lantern at the head of the grave and came and sat down with his back against one of the elm trees. He was so close the boys could have touched him. "Hurry, men," he said, in a low voice, "the moon might come out at any moment." They growled a response and went on digging. For some time there was no noise but the grating sound of the spades discharging their freight of mold and gravel. It was very monotonous. Finally